Hey, my name is Marcus Webb. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a forensic accountant for a mid-size firm called Callaway Partners out of an office on the 14th floor of a building in downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. What forensic accounting is, in its plainest form, is this. I reconstruct what actually happened from the financial record of what was claimed to have happened. Fraud investigations, insurance disputes, business valuations in contested divorces, cases where someone believes the official account of a transaction does not match the reality of it, and needs someone who can read the numbers the way a detective reads a crime scene, looking for the thing that does not belong, the pattern that breaks, the entry that was made at 2 a.m. on a Sunday when the CFO was supposed to be in Cancun. The work is methodical, and it is unglamorous, and it is almost never as dramatic as the television version. But it has the specific satisfaction of work, where the truth is actually in there somewhere, in the documents. And your job is to find it. My father was an auditor for the IRS for 27 years. He is retired now in Terre Haute, and he grows tomatoes and calls me on Sunday evenings, and we talk for 45 minutes about whatever is happening, which is a ritual I value more than I have usually been able to say. He taught me that numbers do not lie, but people arrange them to, and that the difference between a set of books that is honest and one that is deceptive is almost always visible in the pattern of small decisions over time rather than in any single entry. This is the truest thing I know about my work, and I have found, over the years, that it is also true about most other things. I have been at Callaway Partners for 6 years. I made senior associate 2 years ago, which is the correct pace for this work. People who make it faster have usually cut corners that will catch up with them. And people who make it slower have usually failed to understand something important about how to present the work, not how to do it. I do it correctly, and I present it well, and I am, by any honest assessment, good at what I do. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in the Fountain Square neighborhood on the south side of Indianapolis, which is a neighborhood that has been in the process of becoming something slightly different for the last decade, and which I have watched change around me with the specific awareness of someone who reads patterns for a living. The coffee shop on the corner has been there for 11 years and will probably be there for 11 more. The wine bar across the street opened 2 years ago, and I give it 1 more. I have been wrong about both predictions at least once. I wake up at 6:15. I run 3 miles, which I have been doing since I was 24, and which I do not think about anymore. The way you stop thinking about things that have become structural. I shower, make coffee, drive to the office by 8:15. I work until 6 or 6:30, depending on the caseload. I eat dinner at home, usually something I have made in advance on Sunday evenings in the specific domestic efficiency of someone who does not want to think about food on weeknights. I read after dinner. I go to bed. By 10:30, I have 2 close friends in Indianapolis, a man named Patrick, who I went to Indiana University with, and who is now a high school history teacher, and who is the person I call when I need to be reminded that the world contains things other than documents, and a woman named Liz, who works in my building, and who has the particular gift of saying true things without sharpening them. I have a social life that is real but narrow, and which I have accepted on those terms. I am not someone who fills a room. I am someone who is fully present in a room, which is a different thing, and which I have found is valued by fewer people than you might expect, until it is valued very much indeed. I had not been in a relationship for 2 years when the thing with Addie started. The prior relationship had ended on terms that I understood intellectually and had needed the full 2 years to fully process emotionally, which is a ratio I am not proud of, but which is honest. Her name was Jen. She said, at the end of it, That being with me was like trying to have a conversation with someone who was always waiting for more evidence before they committed to a position. She was not wrong. I have thought about that more than she probably intended me to. That was the shape of my life on a Wednesday morning in October when I was in the elevator of my building with my coffee and my laptop bag, and the door opened at the 7th floor, and Adelaide Crane stepped in holding a cardboard carrier with 3 coffees and a bag of pastries balanced on top of it. And as the door closed, she shifted the carrier, and her heel caught the elevator threshold and snapped. She said a word that was not a word you usually hear before 9 in the morning. She looked at the heel, which was hanging from the shoe at roughly a 40-degree angle. She looked at the carrier. She looked at the floor. She could not crouch down without risking the coffees and the pastries. I set my laptop bag down. I took the carrier from her without asking and held it while she crouched and looked at the heel. She looked up at me with the specific expression of a person assessing a problem and determining that it is not, in the category of problems, one of the worst. "It's just the back plate," she said. "The pin is still in." If I had something to push it back in with, I reached into my jacket pocket and took out my pocket knife, which I carry because my father carried one, and because there are more situations in daily life than people expect where a small blade or a flathead end is useful. She looked at the knife and then at me. "May I?" I said. She handed me the shoe. I crouched on the elevator floor and worked the pin back into its housing and pressed the plate back and folded the knife. The elevator arrived at 14 before I was fully upright. I handed her the shoe. She looked at it. She put it back on. She tested the heel against the floor of the elevator. "That'll hold until you can get it properly repaired," I said. "Don't wear it on gravel. No gravel at Callaway Partners," she said. I picked up my laptop bag. We walked out of the elevator. "Thank you," she said. She looked at me with the direct eyes of someone making a precise assessment. "Marcus Webb. Forensic Accounting." "Adelaide Crane," I said. "7th floor." "Addie," she said. "Corporate Communications." She went left. I went right. I thought about her for the rest of the morning more than I had grounds to, which I noted and set aside. That was October. By December, I understood, from the available evidence, that I had been seeing Addie Crane approximately twice a week for the preceding 8 weeks in circumstances that were beginning to be implausible as coincidence. I want to be specific about this, because precision matters in the work I do, and it mattered here. The elevator, twice more, on mornings when I had arrived at different times than usual. The coffee shop on the corner, on a Tuesday when I had left early for a deposition. The lobby, on a Friday evening when I had stayed late reviewing a transfer ledger, and she had been there at what she said was the end of a long week. The parking garage, on a Wednesday morning that I had driven in rather than taking the bus because of rain. Each encounter was brief. Each was friendly. Each was the kind of coincidence that you could explain individually, and that accumulated into a pattern that my professional mind recognized as something that warranted attention. I had read the pattern. I had not yet decided what it meant. This is the part of my work that I am best at, and the part of my life that I am worst at. In an investigation, when the pattern is visible, the next step is clear. You gather more data. You test hypotheses. You rule out the alternatives until you are left with the explanation that accounts for all the evidence. In my life, I had discovered the same approach produced a man who was still gathering data while the evidence walked past him twice a week. What I told myself was that I needed to be sure. What I was actually doing, I understood later, was finding the pattern persuasive and asking for more data anyway, because asking for more data meant I did not have to act on what I already knew. I was learning, in these brief encounters, someone who thought quickly and said true things. She worked in corporate communications, which meant she spent her days translating the complex internal language of a company into something the public or the press or the regulator could understand without misrepresenting it. This required, she told me once, the ability to find the plainest true statement about a situation that was also the most complete true statement, which was harder than it sounded. That's the same problem I have, I said. What, communications? She said. Finding the plainest true statement that is also the most complete one, I said. In forensic work, the facts have to be presented so that someone who is not an accountant can follow the chain without the chain being simplified to the point of inaccuracy. Most cases are lost in that gap. She looked at me. Something adjusted in her expression, the specific adjustment of someone who has filed a new piece of data in an existing structure and found it fits better than expected. Most communications crises too, she said. What's the difference, I said, between a communication that is accurate and one that is honest? Accuracy covers what is stated, she said. Honesty covers what is implied. I looked at her in the lobby of the building on a Friday evening with her coat on and her repaired heel and the Fountain Square rain coming down outside the glass. And I thought, yes, exactly that. I drove home and I thought about the difference between accurate and honest. And I thought about the pattern I had been reading for 8 weeks, and I did not call anyone about it, because there was nothing to say that I had not already said to myself. The Wednesday dinners became a thing, not formally named as such, but with the consistency of something named. We had established, without discussing it, that we would eat at whatever was convenient after we happened to leave the building at the same time, which happened with a frequency that I had measured and which I was no longer pretending was accidental on either side. She was precise in conversation. She did not waste words, and she did not use them to fill space. And the silences between observations were thinking silences rather than social silences, which is the specific difference between a person who is present and a person who is performing presence. I had been told I had the same quality and had never found it remarked on as an asset until Addie. She had opinions, not the performed kind, not the opinions people hold because they believe in having opinions, the kind that come from having looked carefully at something and arrived at a conclusion that could be defended and revised if the evidence required it. She had opinions about building codes, about the specific failure modes of institutional communication, about the corner wine bar and whether it was going to survive. She thought yes, for reasons she articulated in the specific language of neighborhood economics. She had opinions about the case I was working in November, which I had described in outline without specifics, and which she had correctly identified as a transfer pricing dispute without being told, on the basis of the way I described the document structure. Transfer pricing, she said. I looked at her. The way you describe the offshore entities, she said, and the timing of the intercompany invoices. It's the same structure as a fraud case we had a communications crisis around 3 years ago. Multinational, subsidiary arrangement. The invoices didn't match the services. How did the communications crisis resolve? I said. The CFO resigned, and we drafted a statement that was accurate, without implying culpability we hadn't established yet, she said. Accuracy covers what is stated. Honesty covers what is implied. Sometimes those are your whole job. I wrote that down when I got home. Not the case information. I wrote the sentence. I had been trying to say that distinction for 6 years in briefings to clients who needed to understand why the story they told about their books mattered as much as the numbers in them. She was a problem solver by training and by temperament. I understood this better the longer I knew her. She had an architectural degree from Purdue that she had decided not to use in architecture, which she described as the best decision she had made in her professional life. She had understood, in her third year of the program, that she loved the logic of structures but was miserable when the structure had to be built. Because real buildings required committees and compromises and 100 people's contradictory opinions about sight lines, and she did not have the patience for that. Communications was the same logic without the committee problem. She could make the structure, the argument, the narrative, the clear account of what had happened and why, without anyone building it wrong. She lived in the building on the corner of Virginia and College, 10 minutes from mine, which I knew because she had mentioned it in passing twice, and I had noted it with the same involuntary precision with which I noted everything she said. She had grown up in Muncie, daughter of an electrician and a middle school principal, which she described as the ideal combination for a person who needed to learn early that things either worked or they did not, and that excuses did not change the diagnosis. Her father could tell you in 30 seconds whether the wiring was right or whether it was going to fail. Her mother could tell you in 30 seconds whether a student was struggling or choosing to struggle, which were different problems requiring different solutions. Addie had inherited both instruments and applied them together, which produced a person who was precise about cause and effect and very difficult to mislead. She told me about her father, the electrician. She told me he had a rule: never assume the circuit is dead. Always test it. You could be wrong about what was live and what wasn't, and the cost of being wrong was not theoretical. She had grown up with this as household principle as much as professional practice, and she had applied it everywhere she could, including, she said, to people, which produced a woman who was slower to assume she knew the state of something than most people were, and who tested before she acted. What does testing look like, I said, when it's a person rather than a circuit? She looked at her wine glass. You create a condition, she said, and you watch what happens. I looked at her. She looked back at me steadily. That sounds like what I do, I said. Forensically, you create a condition in the document review, and you watch what the numbers do. Yes, she said. How long have you been testing? I said. She was quiet for a moment. Long enough to know the result, she said. I held that. She had put her hand briefly on the bar rail between us, not on mine, near mine, and the evening had the specific quality of something on the edge of becoming clear, and I said nothing, and she said nothing, and we finished our drinks and went home separately. And I lay in the apartment on the south side of Fountain Square, and I knew what the result was, and I had known for some time, and I was still, in the language of her father's profession, leaving the circuit untested. This is the part of the account where I am least proud of myself. She told me this not as biography, but as context, on an evening in November when we had both ended up at the wine bar across the street from my building. Genuinely by coincidence that time, two people who had each decided independently to not go home yet, and had sat at the bar for 2 hours talking about the specific intellectual pleasures of working in institutions that had chronic communication failures and what it took to fix them from the inside. It was the longest conversation we had had. By the end of it, I understood that I was not gathering more data. I had enough data. I was sitting at a bar across the street from my building at 9:30 on a Tuesday with a woman whose thinking ran at the exact frequency of mine, and I was telling myself I needed more time. You analyze everything, don't you? She said. It was not a criticism. It was an observation delivered with the accurate and honest quality she brought to most things she said. Occupational, I said. No, she said. Dispositional. The job suits you because you were already like this. I looked at her. Is that a problem? I said. It depends, she said, on what you do with the analysis. She put on her coat. I walked her to her building, which was 10 minutes, and which I had offered before I finished deciding to offer it, and at her door she looked at me with the look she gave statements she was checking for accuracy. "Tuesday was good," she said. "Yes," I said. "Wednesday," she said, which was not a question. "Wednesday," I said. She went inside. I walked home in the November cold, and I knew what the pattern meant, and I was still doing what Jen had said I did, which was waiting for more evidence before committing to a position. The difference was that I knew I was doing it now, which meant I no longer had the excuse of not knowing. The threat arrived, as these things do, from a direction I had not been watching. His name was Brett Calloway, not the founding Calloway. That was James Calloway, who had retired to Naples, but his son, who had joined the firm 4 years ago, and who had the specific confidence of someone whose last name was on the door, and who had understood this to mean the door would always open for him. Brett was 37, charming in the way that people are charming when they have never been required to be anything else, and he had been asked by his father, prior to retirement, to oversee the firm's expansion into a new practice area, corporate communications advisory, which meant he had been given purview over a function that intersected with the 7th floor. I understood this was happening when Addie mentioned, on a Tuesday in late November, that Brett Calloway had taken her team to lunch and proposed a collaborative service offering between forensic accounting and communications, a packaged crisis response product that would be sold to corporate clients facing regulatory or fraud exposure. The idea was not without merit. Professionally, how did the lunch go? I said. He spent 40 minutes explaining communications to me, she said. In a restaurant I had recommended. What did you say? I said. I said I thought the collaboration had potential and that we should put a framework together, she said. Because it does have potential. The idea is good. The execution of the lunch was not. Did he follow up? I said. He sent flowers to the office the next day, she said. For the team. With a note addressed to me. I looked at her. I told you this, she said, because you should know it, and because I am not interested in managing what you do with information I give you. What do you want me to do with it? I said. Nothing, she said. He will figure out his own situation. I am telling you because the alternative is not telling you, which is a kind of management I'm not willing to do. I thought about that for the rest of the evening. The following Monday, Brett Calloway appeared at my office door. He said he wanted to discuss the communications forensic collaboration and had heard I had been spending time with Addie Crane's team. He said it with the casual authority of a man who expected his framing to be accepted. I said the collaboration was something I would need to review in terms of my current caseload before I could commit time to it. I said it professionally, without heat. He said he hoped I could find the bandwidth, and that Addie was an impressive talent, and that he was looking forward to working more closely with her. He left. I sat at my desk and I thought about the specific quality of what he had just done, which was establish in 2 sentences that he was interested in Addie, and that he expected me to understand this without either of us saying it. It was a kind of communication that was accurate without being honest, and I recognized the technique because Addie had named it for me. I did not go to 7 that day. I went to 7 the following Thursday, when Addie told me in the lobby that Brett had asked her to dinner, not a team dinner, a dinner, and she had declined, and that she had then drafted a memo to her director outlining the parameters of the proposed collaboration in terms specific enough to make clear that the project was professional in scope, and that she would need the engagement to be managed at the director level. Why did you decline? I said. She looked at me. Marcus, she said. I know, I said. Do you? She said. I've known since October, I said. I have been asking for more data. I know you have, she said. I have been waiting. You've been very patient, I said. I have been dropping things near you for 5 months, she said. Patient is not the word I would use. On a Thursday in December, Addie and I had been standing in the lobby waiting for the elevator for 4 minutes when she said, "Without preamble, I have to tell you something, and I'm going to say it now, because if I wait until a better moment, I will find a reason the moment isn't right." I looked at her. The elevator opened. We got in. The doors closed. She said, "I've been dropping things near you." I heard this and understood it and did not immediately respond, because the statement was precise and complete, and there was no useful response to the first 8 words that did not require me to have thought through what they meant, which I had been doing for 2 months. "The coffee carrier," I said. "The coffee carrier was an accident," she said. "The rest was not." "How long?" I said. "Since August," she said. "When I saw you in the parking garage reading a case file in your car before you came in, which I only saw because I was parked 2 spaces over, and I watched you, and I thought, whoever that is, he reads documents the way I want someone to read me." The elevator reached 7. The doors opened. She was looking at the doors. "Not at me. I am aware," she said, "that this is a significant amount of information to deliver in an elevator. You can take some time with it." She walked out. The doors closed. I rode to 14. I sat at my desk, and I looked at the transfer ledger that was open on my screen, which I had been working on for 3 days, and which was the kind of document that required my full attention, and received approximately none of it for the following 2 hours. I thought about what she had said. I thought about August, which was 3 months before October, which meant she had been in the pattern for 5 months total, and I had been reading the pattern for 2 of them, and none of this was news to me except the specificity of the confirmation. I thought about the parking garage, about reading a case file in my car, about someone 2 spaces over watching me read and thinking, he reads documents the way I want someone to read me. I had been an accountant for 6 years. I had been told by more than one senior partner that my value to the firm was the ability to reconstruct what actually happened from incomplete records, to take a fragmentary set of data and find the true account that explained all of it. I had done this with financial documents involving hundreds of millions of dollars, in cases where the stakes were careers and reputations, and sometimes freedom. I had been sitting 2 feet away from the most legible set of evidence I had ever been given for 5 months and asking for more data. I closed the ledger. I took the elevator to 7. She was at her desk when I appeared in the doorway of the corporate communications office. She looked up. She was not surprised to see me, which told me she had assessed the probability of my coming down and found it worth preparing for. "Wednesday works for me," I said. "Tonight works better." She looked at me for a moment. Something in her face shifted from the careful expression to something warmer and more specific. "You took 2 hours," she said. "I was reviewing the evidence," I said. "And?" she said. "The pattern was clear in October," I said. "I had everything I needed by November. I have been asking for more data past the point where asking for more data was analytical rather than protective, and I am done doing that." I looked at her. "I have been reading you since August, without telling you I was reading you, which is the same thing you were doing, and neither of us said anything. And I think we have both been patient past the point where patience is a virtue, and into the territory where it is just time we didn't spend." She was quiet for a moment. "The heel," she said. "Did you know?" "I didn't know about the heel," I said. "I knew something. I didn't know the pattern was that deliberate." "How did the heel make you feel?" she said. "In the elevator." I thought about it honestly, like I wanted to have a reason to hand her back the shoe, I said. She looked at me. The look that was checking for accuracy. "That's honest," she said. "I'm working on it," I said. She stood up from her desk. She crossed the corporate communications office, which was the kind of office that had glass walls and too much ambient light, and which was not the setting I would have chosen. But the setting was not mine to choose. She stopped in front of me and looked at me with the direct eyes. "Marcus," she said. "Yes," I said. "I dropped my pen near you on a Tuesday in September," she said, "and a folder on the stairs in October, and my phone outside the coffee shop in November, and possibly a few other things that were not entirely accidental." She paused. "I am not proud of this as a strategy. It worked," I said. "You didn't say anything," she said. "I was reading the pattern," I said. "And the verdict?" she said. I kissed her in the corporate communications office, which I had not planned, but which was the only accurate response to everything that had been accurate and honest in the preceding 5 months. It was not tentative. It had 5 months of patience in it, which is not a small amount, and it tasted like the specific relief of a position finally committed to. She put her hand on my chest and stepped back and looked at me. "You took 2 hours and 43 minutes, she said. "I know," I said. "Jen was right about you," she said, not unkindly, as a fact. "She was right about the mechanism," I said. "She was wrong about it being permanent." Addie looked at me, the look that checked accuracy. "Are you sure?" she said. "I closed the ledger," I said. "I took the elevator to 7. That's what sure looks like for me." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'll take it." The Brett Calloway situation resolved the way these situations resolve when one person has a coherent position and the other one has a title. The memo Addie had drafted established the collaboration as a firm-level project with defined scope, which meant Brett's ability to manage her access to it was limited to the access anyone on the leadership team had. He attended 2 planning meetings, said the right things, and shifted his attention elsewhere by the new year. I know this not because I tracked it, but because Addie told me, in the flat, accurate tone she used for facts, that he had found another direction, which she said with neither satisfaction nor relief, just as information that closed a line of inquiry. Her director, a woman named Paulette, who had been in corporate communications for 20 years, and who had the specific patience of someone who had watched 100 Bretts and knew how each of them ended, stopped Addie in the hall in January and said the memo had been exactly the right move, and that she had handled it well. She said this plainly, the way true things get said when the person saying them has seen enough to know which things are true. Addie told me this over dinner. I said Paulette was right. She said she knew, and that it was easier to know with someone else in the room for it. I understood what she meant by that. A man named Gerald worked the security desk in the lobby of our building. He had been there for 11 years, which I knew because he had told me on my first day at Calloway Partners, and which meant he had seen everything that happened in that lobby for over a decade. He was 62 and unhurried, and had the specific wisdom of someone who has watched the same patterns repeat across long enough timescales to understand which ones matter. In January, Gerald stopped me one morning as I was coming through the lobby with Addie, which had become a thing that happened when our schedules aligned, which was most mornings. He looked at both of us and then at me specifically and said, "Took you a while." I said I was thorough. He said, He went back to his desk. Addie looked at me. "How long has he known?" she said. "He works the lobby," I said. "He's known since August." She laughed. The full laugh, not the almost laugh. I had learned the difference by November. 7 months after Addie told me she had been dropping things near me, she moved to Fountain Square, not into my building. 4 blocks south, into a 2-bedroom on Prospect Street that had the kitchen she needed, she cooked seriously. The way serious people cook, which is with full attention and no shortcuts, and the specific pleasure of a process that cannot be hurried. and the natural light she required, and which was close enough that the distinction between her apartment and mine had become largely administrative. She is, in the specific way that matters in the life I have built, the person who made the life larger without making it someone else's. She has not required me to become a different kind of person. She has required me, which is the more useful and more difficult thing, to become a more complete version of the one I am. I told Patrick about her in November, the first time they met over dinner, and Patrick looked at her for the duration of the dinner with the expression of a history teacher assessing a primary source, checking provenance, checking internal consistency, and at the end of the evening he said to me, privately, walking to the parking lot, "She says what she means." I said I knew. He said, "That's what you needed." I said I knew. He said, "You're an idiot for taking this long." I said I knew. He was right on all 3 counts. Liz, who works in my building and who has known me for 6 years, saw us together for the first time at the elevator in February and looked at Addie and then at me and said, "Oh, finally." She pressed the button for her floor and did not elaborate. The elevator arrived. She got in. The doors closed. I have thought, since December, about the difference between accurate and honest, the question I asked Addie at the wine bar in November, and which she answered precisely. Accuracy covers what is stated. Honesty covers what is implied. I had been accurate about my feelings for 5 months. I had said nothing dishonest. I had asked questions and answered them, and been present in every conversation we had, and all of it was accurate. I had not been honest. I had known what the pattern meant, and I had not said so, and the not saying was a choice with a cost I was paying in time. The numbers do not lie. My father told me that. People arrange them to, but the numbers themselves are always telling the true story, and the story is always visible in the pattern of small decisions over time. She dropped her pen on a Tuesday in September. She dropped a folder on the stairs in October. She dropped her phone outside the coffee shop in November. The pattern was clear by October. I had the evidence. I asked for more, and more, and more, until a morning in December when she said the true thing in an elevator, and I rode to 14, and sat with it for 2 hours and 43 minutes, and then closed the ledger. Maybe the hardest case is the one where you are both the investigator and the evidence. Maybe asking for more data is sometimes the right call, and sometimes the call you make when you already know the answer. And the answer requires something of you that you are not yet ready to give. Maybe the difference between caution and avoidance is smaller than either of them looks, and the only way to tell which one you are doing is to ask yourself whether you are still learning something or whether you have been done learning for a while and have simply not filed the report. I filed the report. She had been dropping things near me. I had been picking them up. We both knew what that meant. I am glad I finally said so.